Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar fan commentary track. This one's going to be for Book 2 Earth, Episode 15, The Tales of Ba Sing Se. So, as of all the sort of voting for future episodes that you want me to do as part of this series, this is the last one that has got like multiple votes. So definitely continue to send in your suggestions for other episodes so I have a better idea about what episodes you want. There's obviously still a few other suggestions that are out there, of course, but you know, I do really want to know what other ones you guys want as well. So I have a pretty kind of lengthy kind of idea of what you guys want to see. But yeah, in terms of instructions for this video, if you want to sync up your copy of the episode up with this commentary track, the way you need to have your copy of the episode ready to go to press play on the episode, including the introduction, whether that be your Blu-ray, DVD, whatever. And basically, as part of this introduction to the video, I'm going to stop speaking in just a minute. There'll be about a 10-second pause with no audio, and then when I start speaking again after that pause, that's when I'm going to hit play, that's when you should hit play, and we should be synced up within about a second of each other, so it should be fine. So have your copy ready to go. I'm going to stop speaking now, and then when I speak again after the pause, hit play and we'll be synced up. Okay, so here we are with The Tales of Ba Sing Se, episode 15 of Book 2 Earth. I think the main thing in general to say about this episode is just its unique style as an episode, as well as its placement within the series. It being an episode made up of shorter sequences with a variety of different characters, none of which are particularly like plot important, but they allow you just, you know, the Tales of Ba Sing Se. It's a lot of the people living in Ba Sing Se, the team, Zuko, Iroh. What do they get up to while they're here? While we're in this section of the story where Zuko and Iroh are just kind of refugees, you know, things are going okay for them, and the team has to sort of be on hold from doing anything sort of heroic because of the plotting of Long Feng and the threat of what's happened to Appa. It's a bit of a risk in a way. Like, episode 14 and 17 really feel like a part 1 and part 2, but then you have this episode as well as Appa's Lost Days in between these two episodes that are so heavily linked and are very plot focused. It was a big risk, and while they're interesting different episodes, this episode, in my opinion, tends to be a little bit overrated by the fandom. They remember it primarily for the tale of Iroh and not much of the rest of it. And so I don't rate it as highly as a lot of people. I have this as being still a good episode. I have it in like my, I think, third highest tier. It's still in the good episodes, but it's relatively low down. I believe it's actually like somewhere like 52nd or something like that on my list of episodes, just highlighting that there's only a handful of episodes of Avatar that are below this that I don't consider to be in the same tier as this. But yeah, this first one here, the tale of Toph and Katara, is nice because it highlights the, I suppose, good side of the Katara and Toph dynamic. Whereas a lot of the times when you get Toph and Katara focus, it does tend to be them being the two members of the group that are at most odds with each other. Stuff like the chase, a lot of the runaway really emphasized that, so here's the sort of counterpoint to that. But you can also say an episode like the runaway from Book 3 uses what we learn here combined with what we learn in the chase to sort of show you where the conflict comes from between them, but also where they kind of come together. Of like, with Katara, she has someone who's obviously very different than her, Toph, but Katara also is someone who cares about her almost more than her parents, and so it's this very important friendship that she has, even if they do, you know, get on each other's nerves at times. And, you know, you can see Katara admires having, you know, such a confident kind of girl as part of the group, which is part of the key dynamic at the end of this episode. You see them just hanging out together, having fun here. What would have just been just relaxing thing for like the both of them ends up being sort of relaxing and fun and entertaining because it's relaxing for Katara, but Toph makes it kind of fun with some of the jokes and stuff like that she does. And yeah, here comes the mean girls to introduce the more sort of emotional part of the episode of just as strong as Toph is, as much as she doesn't care about what other people think about her, it still hurts when people say stuff to her. And especially these like final couple of lines of dialogue between Katara and Toph, I think, like this episode is very well written. I feel it would have been nice to just do some more important stuff in this episode as well as just the sort of character stuff. But it's still, I think, on the good side of things, like I said, even if I don't rate it super highly. And yeah, this whole idea about because she's blind, she doesn't care about appearances that much. She doesn't care what she looks like. She knows who she is. And I really like the Katara line as well of just, like that just telling Toph, like, I admire how strong you are. And then, even though you said it doesn't matter, you are pretty. It's just a nice little moment between the two of them, and it works really well. And then end with the nice like kind of joke that still includes the emotions of just like, I'd like to say that about you too, but I don't know what you look like. Punch on the shoulder. That's how Toph shows affection, of course. But here's the episode, the tale that everyone remembers from this one. This is the part that I think is the reason I think a lot of people highlight this as being one of the better episodes, even though I think still it primarily is for the last scene. I would agree that this is the best tale of the episode, but I don't think this alone makes it one of the best episodes of Avatar. That's what I'd say. I understand it has one of the most memorable scenes in the entire series, one of the most, commonly talked about, posted about on social media is just people showing the sort of Leaves of the Vine scene at the end. But yeah, we get some nice songs in this episode, and all the various positive traits of Iroh, ending with the biggest, I suppose, failure in his life, the worst thing that's happened to him, the thing that really changed him. It's nice to know. Here's a song that sort of cheers someone up, and the episode ends with a song that's very, very emotional. And the other thing about this episode is that, like, it's an in-universe tribute to Liu Ten, Iroh's son, but it's also an out-of-universe tribute to Mako, who, of course, is Iroh's voice actor, who died during the course of, recording stuff for Book 2. And it's cool here, just like a Earth Kingdom kind of street game that's played, with earthbending. Little piece of advice given to everyone he meets along the way, helping them out with his knowledge of this plant likes this, in a situation like this you should probably try to apologize, but actually run, he's very annoyed. So there's some nice humor here as well. They keep the tone pretty nice, in that you don't expect to be hit as hard as you do at the end of this tale as you do, given that I'll adjust this guy's stance, we'll deal with an incident with a game and stuff like that, but it gets quite serious. Even just this kind of, has a nice dynamic to it. Of just him helping someone who is trying to rob him. First giving him actual, combat advice, but then, you're not really suited for this. Why are you doing this? And he helps the guy to realize what he may want to do. Stance change. You don't look like the criminal type, and it's true. Until, always over tea. Yes, you can be a masseuse. And the nice advice there of just help from others can be important, like that. Just pure believing in yourself is great, but there's a lot of value in someone else also kind of believing in you. And here's the very emotional one. Leaves from the Vine. For the further addressing, the idea of Liu Ten, who we learned about back in Book 1, of course, but you know, it coming back here, Iroh taking the time out to remember what happened. And this line has always been pretty interesting in that, like, I've sort of read into it in that, like, before of like, oh, I'm sorry I couldn't help you, and that, like, oh, was there something wrong with the relationship, or is it purely just that, like, Iroh wasn't, like, directly beside his son when he died? And I think that is the case, because especially the recent book, Legacy of the Fire Nation, definitely got across the idea that, like, they had a very, very positive relationship. There was no real issues at all. And it is more of just Iroh's regret of that at this moment where he was doing so well at the Siege of Ba Sing Se, he also had his greatest defeat. The moment of what seemingly was his greatest victory also ended up with the worst thing that ever happened to him, that led to him changing so much, even though we always knew that Iroh kind of has always been so different than Ozai. But that was the thing that really kind of fully committed Iroh to that different path. But, you know, a very, very emotional one. Leaves from the Vine is a great song, and it's definitely the strongest of these tales. Unfortunately, I do feel that the Tale of Aang here is kind of one of the weakest ones, just purely from the perspective of it feeling the least important. I love that we get to see all of these animals, like that. There's a Tigerdillo there. Like, so many of the pro bending teams are basically based on animals that are introduced or at least shown in episodes here. What is it, like Golden Temple Tigerdillos? There's a Rabaroo there. Red Sands Rabaroos is one of the teams. That's the all-female team. And of course, Aang loves animals. Like, it relates to the fact that, like, he has Appa. He's traveled around, he knows about animals, and what did he do when he first got back up? In the early episodes of Book 1, he wanted to go around and ride animals all over the place. So of course he would care about stuff like this. But yeah, Hog Monkey's there. Platypus Bear. That's one of the classic, I think, Avatar animals. Really, really cool. Cabbage Merchant's in this one as well. There's some nice references here. I think the focus on the different animals was very nice too. Aang just helping out with a kind of animal uprising in a way. And that's the thing, like, even though this is one of the weaker parts of the episode just because it feels the least important, it's still entertaining. And that's why, like, I don't completely pan this episode for not being important. But I can't place it that highly. But yeah, of course, the bison whistle comes back into play. It has an effect on other animals as well. But Aang's airbending assisted blowing of the whistle has attracted a few too many animals, as is a bit of a joke at the end of the episode. He didn't just get all the zoo animals, he got more than that. And I love earthbending gates. I love that it is literally just earthbenders opening up a solid wall. They just have like a gap between it, but they literally just push two giant things apart. And yeah, they let them out here. And then this is probably one of the coolest parts of the episode. Aang doing two elements at once, not in the Avatar state. You will be surprised how little in the entire series we ever see an Avatar actually bend two elements at once when they're not in the Avatar state. It really doesn't happen. They tend to very much switch between one and the other and never do two exactly at the same time. So Aang on the air scooter at the same time as he's earthbending is a pretty notable thing. But yeah, there we go. The Rabaroos in the pouch. And yeah, it would, if Aang had to have a different role, it probably would be something related to animals. And yeah, he attracted every animal, including people's pets. And, you know, just highlighting that, yeah, like there are normal cats, there are normal bears. There's a few non-hybrid animals in the world as well. The Tale of Sokka up next. I think this one is very fun just because of the writing, of course. You know, a lot of effort just went into purely the script on this one because basically every line of dialogue in the episode is a haiku or nearly a haiku. So here he encounters the 575 Society, including Mokmu Ling, who's the leader. And like this one is literally just, Sokka falls in a window, says a few haikus, gets into a kind of poetry slam battle, makes a mistake, is fired back out the window. It's just like this incident that happens to Sokka. Like, very brief, it's just a couple of minutes in and out. He mistakenly ends up being amazing at this, but then immediately is fired out. And I suppose like everyone's impressed with just like she's using sort of very fancy language to form her haikus, but like he's doing very sort of more simplistic language. And in the end, it ends up being his undoing, where like he's doing sort of slang, and he can't figure out in his head how many syllables is certain things. As well as being, comedy as well in this. You can almost like guarantee that just they wanted to have Sokka have a haiku that had the the word boomerang in it, and so they really built it around that. And then, yep, that's one syllable too many. And immediately he's just gone. One mistake and he's gone. And yeah, straight out. He fell in, thrown out. So, very, very brief, nice. But like, is it really something like that is part of like a excellent tier episode? I'm not quite sure. This is definitely the second best part of the episode, I think. The Tale of Zuko. I like this romance. I think Jin is definitely like one of the best, minor female characters. In that, like, she returns in the comic Going Home Again, which is one of the better Avatar comics from the Lost Adventures. And I like that there is this sense of like, if Zuko's path was just able to just be as an Earth Kingdom refugee, this would probably be the girl he settled down with, because of how good their dynamic ends up being. And you can tell straight away, like, she is so into him. And especially with where they go with the episode, like, he actually ends up liking her as well. Which is why I actually like that comic Going Home Again so much. It's set like post book 2, obviously after Zuko's betrayal. But it's when, of course, like May and Ty Lee and Azula are back and stuff like that. So it is him, like, supposed properly getting to meet up with May again. And so it ends up being this episode where he sort of reunites with the girl he really cares about in May. But if he was able to really separate himself from everything about his old life, this could have worked. And I think that's what's so great about this one. People talk about like, oh, maybe he could have had a relationship with that Song from like 202, but I think it's really an episode like this that's pretty well done. You get to see Zuko's awkwardness. Like, this is the type of character he can't really be in the Fire Nation, around Ozai, around his sister, but he can here when he feels more comfortable. Traveling circus. And of course they utilize this line in the comic as well, in that when Jin and May meet, he's like, May was also part of the traveling circus. She's the knife thrower, which is of course May's talent, so it's pretty fun. And again, it is an example of like, if this episode was maybe like timed a little bit better and put in a maybe different place, didn't interrupt such an important plot, you almost were like, I'd like to see more stuff like this. I think now, obviously, without any animation, these are the type of episodes that we really wish we could have, of just a selection of short stories done in animation. Whereas when you're actually watching the show, you wish everything was just laser focused on the plot. But Zuko being a bit risky here, just wanting to sort of, impress her. She wanted to show him this, so he has her just close her eyes and I'll light it up while you can't see. Just that he's willing to do these things to people he kind of like seems to care about and so on. So it's just nice. It's a pretty nicely done relationship, and like it's like they tease the kiss. It doesn't quite happen. Most valuable customer. And that's the thing, you can really get behind this relationship, because again, at this point, like you're not entirely sure that like, oh, what way Zuko's path is going to go. But he kind of walks off because he still is so unsure. We haven't hit Lake Laogai yet when he makes that big decision. But you think he's frustrated, he's gone back to being himself. You basically think he's done very similar to what he's done in like Zuko Alone. But then he just opens the door again and it's just like, it was nice. He did enjoy it. But he's not willing to leave behind what he sees as his destiny at this point. Just that idea of not settling down. Which is, I'll quickly bring it up here. The Last Airbender movie, I like that scene that Iroh and Zuko have, where like I think Iroh says to him in the movie, like, you have a chance to kind of get away from everything. Why don't you just settle down with an Earth Kingdom girl or something like that? And Zuko's like, do you want to know why? And just calls the boy over and is like, what do you know about Prince Zuko? And the boy tells him like what he knows of the story. And, that's Zuko's reason for why he can't settle down. I almost kind of wish like you'd maybe manage to incorporate a little bit of that into things here. That maybe Zuko kind of got into this relationship, but then in talking to Iroh realized that no, like it can't happen just because of who I am. But it's a very nice section of the episode. I think it works. Well done romance. But yeah, interesting that they kind of have here the tale of Momo to end things. Very little, no dialogue, I believe, in this episode. You actually get it from kind of Momo's perspective, what he hears. All interaction with the animals here. Mainly, as we see here, Momo and these pygmy pumas. Again, highlighting, that they write animals very well in this show. These pygmy pumas are out to get Momo, but Momo ends up helping them in the end, and they return the favor to Momo for helping them, which is the sort of clue about where Appa is, which is the setup for the next episode, explaining what Appa's been up to since he was taken. But yeah. And then yeah, they are just normal monkeys from what I can tell. So there's just sort of another kind of non-hybrid animal, I believe. And it's just pretty fun. And yeah, they're all captured together. But as we see, Momo is one of the more intelligent animals, is able to get out. He watches as the kind of lock in front of him is closed, and he realizes how it opens. So that's very, very clever on Momo's side of things. But yeah, the background imagery there, making it clear exactly what's going on. These animals have been captured for food. We don't want Momo to get cooked. And you also see now the pygmy pumas, despite being so powerful earlier on, are also, terrified about what could happen. And just nice little bit of emotion of Momo, would you blame him for leaving them there after what happened? But no, he goes back to help them. And they become friends. It's just nice that they were able to do this with just animals, no dialogue, just animation and kind of good writing. And yeah, he sort of gets angry, like, why are you taking that? You know, that's all I have left of Appa. But they show him they recognize this. The scent. And yeah, Appa's footprint. Again, highlighting that, like, you know, the two of them are close. At this point in time, you know, the last, you know, of the kind of Air Nation, air nomads, including their animals. So, yeah, that's the Tales of Ba Sing Se. Like I said, you know, individually, each of the parts works well on its own and is fine. And as a collection of, you know, short stories, it's nice. It's just, I think the timing is a little bit, you know, not the best. That, like, you go from one of the most intriguing episodes, 214, into this, and then you follow this one up with the, again, animal-centric episode, which is important again. They write animals well. But you interrupt one of your most important arcs with two very experimental episodes. And I'm not quite sure how well exactly that works, and if you wouldn't just be better off just extending out the Ba Sing Se arc and having more of just an incorporation of some sort of more casual events into that, rather than just like having an episode of just more, you know, casual stuff going on. Instead, kind of linking it all together and cutting away to like Appa as like a side plot in all of it, rather than a solo episode. They're the sort of things you sort of wonder about, like, would it make this section flow that little bit better? Just because, like, book 2 is incredibly strong, and you would have to say that just this kind of break here is probably one of the more kind of weaker sections of book 2. But, you know, it's still Avatar. It's still very, very, very good. But yeah, like, I think the order for me is definitely, okay, The Tale of Iroh, number 1, Tale of Zuko, number 2. I'd say probably The Tale of Toph and Katara is probably 3. Then The Tale of Momo, probably. Then The Tale of, like, I think The Tale of Aang and The Tale of Sokka, you know, are both sort of very on par. I'd probably put The Tale of Aang first, just because, you know, you do get to see a lot of different animals. And Sokka, unfortunately, last, but not because there's anything particularly wrong with it. It's just, like, very, very short. It's clever, well written, but there's not much to it, really. You sort of wonder if they had just included the key elements of this episode elsewhere, what they would have done in book 2 with another, like, full episode. I think that could have been an interesting thing to think about. But yeah, I still enjoy this episode. I just do think people, when talking about this episode, sometimes fail to really bring in the fact that overall the episode isn't as high quality as just the, you know, Iroh Lu Ten scene. Like, the thing I'll end on is just that, to me, the scene, like, we're 2020, like, so many years on since the original airing of this episode, and we know next to nothing about Lu Ten, and I think that's the only real issue that I, like, necessarily have here, is just that are we really praising this episode for this very vague scene that we really still to this day don't have, like, almost like full context for. Like, we don't know who Lu Ten is as a character beyond just that his impact is important on Iroh. Like, what happens to him affects Iroh's, you know, destiny. And that's why I really wish we could get some context given to Lu Ten, in the same way that I recently did Zuko Alone in the commentaries, and I talked about how that episode was added onto so well and improved by the Search comic, which is able to give a lot of detail to the otherwise vague scenes. I think we need something to do the same for this episode. As it is right now, I kind of struggle to not just watch in a way that Lu Ten scene and not just be like, this would have so much more meaning if we had, like, seen Lu Ten as a character, if we got to know him as a character, know what happened, if we ever got a flashback to what actually did happen. How was Lu Ten killed in the battle? What exactly was happening at that point in time? And incorporate Lu Ten into a telling of Iroh's backstory in some way. And that's why I think that's important to bring it into play, because otherwise it's like, yes, this is a nice moment in Iroh's story, but it's a nice moment in the vague story of Iroh that like you're trying to piece together, and that's the only thing I'd kind of put against some of that. But yeah, they're my thoughts on the Tales of Ba Sing Se. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode. But yeah, continue to suggest episodes for me to do in future commentaries. I definitely need them, so I know what ones you want done. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.